That evening, like so many others in the orchard, the Chicago air motor windmill turned slowly in the gentle breeze. The blackberries were ripe, and the large tree offered us shade while the children settled at Uncle Augustine's feet, who already had his twig in his mouth and his hat firmly on. "Today I'm going to tell you something that happened to Thomas when he was younger," he said with a mischievous smile. Although he was very scared at first, now he laughs every time he remembers it. Thomas, a little older now, covered his face with his hands while the other children looked at him with curious eyes. "A scary story, Uncle?" asked Rita, the smallest of the group. "Well, it depends on how you look at it," said Uncle Augustine with a chuckle. It turns out that one night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Tomás eavesdropped on the ghost stories his grandmother was telling his sisters. I was there too, of course. She talked about the boy with the green lamp, the scarecrow of the creek, and even the faceless horseman. Thomas quietly covered himself with a blanket in the living room, pretending to be asleep, but his eyes were wider than the ranch gate. The children laughed. Thomas just nodded, remembering that night well. When Grandma finished telling the stories, she looked at me out of the corner of her eye and said loudly, "That boy is already asleep. You better send him home before the night watchman catches him." And I knew she was talking about Tomás. So I touched his shoulder, and he pretended to wake up. I didn't want to leave. Thomas protested. The story was so good. I know, boy. But the best part comes now. You see, the path from the mill to Thomas's house isn't very long, but that night there was no moon. Only the whistling of the wind and the creaking of the mill accompanied his steps. Tomás walked with his heart heavy, imagining the faceless horseman coming down the hill or the scarecrow dragging his chains along the path. The children's eyes widened. He was walking quickly, looking around, when suddenly, he heard something. Tack, tack. Slow footsteps. He stopped. The mill turned once more, creak, and the wind fell silent. Then, in front of him, two enormous eyes shone in the darkness. Fixed. Round. Like two lit lanterns. "Aya!" Rita shouted, hugging her cousin. Thomas shouted even louder. Uncle Augustine said, laughing. He ran out like a bat out of hell, crossed Grandma's yard, went through the door, and hid under the table, shaking like jelly. "And what was it, Uncle?" a boy asked, without blinking. "Well, we all went out with lamps, thinking the ghost himself had appeared. But do you know what it was?" Everyone shook their heads, holding their breath. "It was Pancratio," said Uncle Augustine, bursting into laughter. Don Eulogio's donkey. He had gotten loose and was strolling calmly around the mill. His eyes reflected the light from the house, and he looked like a ghost, but he was actually looking for fallen blackberries. The laughter was not long in coming. Thomas laughed too, now without shame. Since then, Thomas isn't afraid of ghosts anymore, but every time he sees a donkey, he cracks a little smile, Uncle Augustine concluded with a wink. The children applauded and asked for another story. But first, Grandma Donna Maria arrived with sweet bread and a pot of hot atole. "And now, for a snack," she said affectionately. No story is ever enjoyed on an empty stomach. And so, amid laughter, blackberries, and bread rolls, that night was etched in the children's hearts, like one of the many times fear dissolves with the light of truth. If you liked the story, don't hesitate to subscribe to our channel, and before you leave us a like. It encourages us and drives us to create more and better stories for you and your children. Also, if you ring the bell, YouTube will notify you when we upload a new story. Thank you for your visit and have a nice day.